Fifth generational warfare is defined as that type of warfare conducted primarily through non-kinetic military action, such as social engineering, misinformation, cyber attacks, along with emerging technologies such as artificial intelligence and fully autonomous systems. Fifth generation warfare has been described as a war of, quote, information and perception. So this video is entitled Spiritual Warfare, and what we're going to be going through is a few readings from the saints from this beautiful book here, Living Without Hypocrisy, Spiritual Counsels of the Holy Elders of Optina, specifically on spiritual warfare. This book is situated with little subheadings and sections like that gives you sayings, quotes from the saints, and we're going to read through this maybe a dozen or so quotes, and I'll let you know what saint is that I'm reading from on spiritual warfare. And I'd like to let me know what you feel that term means, whether you're religious, whether you're secular, or whatever it may be, even from a philosophical or psychological standpoint. What is spiritual warfare? And is what we call informational warfare these days, is this just spiritual warfare as observed from a materialist perspective? Because it seems that no matter how arcane the language seems to be, that what we are looking at now in terms of fourth, fifth generational warfare and what's talked about as spiritual warfare from many different perspectives, but specifically the Orthodox perspective, is incredibly coherent, which I find striking. So the way that this warfare is conducted, so spiritual warfare is conducted through human beings. You can think of it from a secular informational perspective. Digital warfare is done through human beings. You can think of arousing mobs on Twitter and having them actually go and spill out into the world and commit violence or whatever it may be. There are countless examples of such. I think another example of this would just be the effects of social media, especially on young boys and girls, with regards to status and with regards to self-perception and just interpersonal and personal psychoanalytic relationships. I think that there's a lot of different ways, and if you want to add some, I'd appreciate it, of some examples of spiritual warfare. I think where there's some overlap is with these terms that are going to be introduced here, evil spirits and the passions. So ultimately, the warfare through an Orthodox lens is facilitated through an inflaming of the passions in people and in collectives. And in this inflaming of the passions, sovereignty is given up, and there seems to be, or there is, less agency. I mean, you can think of it in a very clear way in terms of an addiction. If someone is addicted to heroin or whatever it may be, they lose the ability, Jean Vervicky calls it reciprocal narrowing. They lose the ability to see options outside of the narrow focus of that addiction, right? So you can think of it in many different ways and in terms like that. So we'll just get in here. Let me know what you think in the comments, and we'll just get going. First quote is from Saint Macarius. Our life is a spiritual warfare with unseen evil spirits. They arouse us through our passions and urge us to disobey the commandments of God. When we look and investigate carefully, we will find that for every passion there is a cure, a commandment opposing it, and therefore the enemies try to keep us from this saving cure. What do you think of terms like this from wherever you come from? Evil spirits, what can those look like? How can we make sense of something like an evil spirit in our current kind of nomenclature? Same thing with passions. What does it mean practically to defeat the passions through the corresponding commandment? So let me know what you think. Next quote is from Saint Moses. It is impossible to be delivered from the mental wolves without the aid of Christ. His almighty grace is needed to repel them, not the feeble help of man. To obtain this help, a person must throw himself at the feet of Jesus Christ with extreme humility Implore him for everything. Cast all his sorrows on him, and even more than this, pray to the Mother of God and all the saints with the sincere acknowledgement of his sins and his inability to correct himself. So what does that mean to you? What do you think about these terms, mental wolves? What do you think about throwing himself or yourself at the feet of Jesus Christ with extreme humility? Where does this impetus, this compunction of humility come from in the first place? And then prayer to the Mother of God and the saints with regards to spiritual warfare. All right, next quote from St. Macarius again. The struggle with the passions is indispensable, for the darkness and gloom of the passions obscure our spiritual vision, so that we cannot see the Sun of Righteousness. Next quote, St. Macarius again. Struggle against the passions, the warfare with them and the invisible enemies is relentless, terrible, and ferocious. Humility, however, defeats them. So that is the theme that's so far and will continue to run through in terms of what to do about spiritual warfare on the individual level. I'd love to know what you think there. Next quote is from St. Leo. It is impossible to avoid those spiritual battles in which we sometimes conquer and at other times we are conquered. If we see that something is not within our power, we should leave it as it is. Wanting to hold on to it or make it more to our liking will only bring harm to yourself and add sorrow to sorrow. Next from St. Anthony. Whoever overcomes one passion conquers one demon, and whoever overcomes two passions conquers two demons. And whoever forsakes 10 or more passions defeats a whole regiment of demons and will enjoy spiritual peace. What does that look like to overcome a passion? There's many examples: overcoming an addiction, or maybe a type of behavior, overcoming PTSD, countless examples. But let me know what you think. And what do you think about the relationship between the passions and the demons from both a secular and a spiritual perspective? Next is from Saint Anatoly. Are you fighting against your passions? Fight, and be good soldiers of Christ. Do not give in to evil and do not be carried away by the weakness of the flesh. During the time of temptation, flee to the physician, crying out with the Holy Church, our Mother, O God, number me with the thief, the harlot, and the publican, with repentance and save me. Next one, Saint Nikon. Yes, you should know which of the passions torment you the most, and you should especially struggle against it. To achieve this, you must examine your conscience daily. You must examine your conscience daily. What are some things or some tools or some ways that you examine your conscience? Do you do it on a daily basis? Do you think there's an importance of meditation in this sense from a Christian perspective? Are you familiar with any specific meditations from a Christian, maybe hesychastic tradition? Please let us know in the comments. Next, another one from St. Nikon. Victory over the passions happens through the power of God. Our feeble powers are not capable of this. We must humbly recognize this and thereby attract the mercy and help of God to ourselves through humility. There's humility again. What do you think about this idea of that victory over the passions happens through the power of God and not through our power? It's interesting. I go back to addiction because that's the passion that I've been fighting with for most of my adult life. We think of the 12-step program. The first step, right, is realizing that you are powerless against your addiction, whatever it may be. And in this, in this realization, in this giving up, this surrendering, paradise, the term paradise in Greek, paradisos, actually means surrender as well. But in this surrender, the addiction, lifelong addiction, is overcome. And there's also a lot of more correlates in terms of almsgiving or the way that an addict or a former addict stay sober, one of the best ways is to help other addicts. Let me know if you have some experience in this sense and if that is coherent with you at all. All right, next one is St. Nikon again. May the Lord give us the wisdom to carry out our battle with the enemy of our salvation and with sin without duplicity. Without the wisdom of the Lord and his help, victory is impossible. We are infirm and weak without divine help. But with the help of God, all things are possible. As the Apostle Paul said, I can do all things through Christ, which strengthen me. Next is from St. Hilarion. In the pure writings of the Holy Fathers, we see that he who desires to cleanse his heart of the passions must call on the Lord for help. This is so, but we cannot even say the Jesus prayer without our thoughts being plundered. With beginners, God does not demand undistracted prayer. It is acquired with much time and labor. As the writings of the Holy Fathers say, quote, God gives prayer to him who prays, close quote. And so we must nevertheless continue to pray orally and with the mind. It's another theme that, is evident when reading the Church Fathers is the importance of prayer, the centrality of prayer. I felt in my journey recently and even now that I'm hanging on by a thread in terms of my orthodoxy by having a prayer life and a prayer rule. So I don't go to services regularly. So I feel like I'm just hanging by a thread with the prayers that I do with my family and myself every day. So I don't know what let me know what you guys experience. Our next quote is from St. Leo. No matter how much the waves of temptation rise up against your soul, always hasten to Christ. The Savior will always come to your aid and will calm the waves. Believe that the Lord has providentially arranged such experiences for your soul's healing, and do not reject them, seeking bodily peace and imaginary tranquility, for it is better to be shaken and yet to endure. If you will again gain an insight from this, it will greatly lighten your struggle, and you will gain more peace than if you do not. So what is the insight here? I think this is beautiful and fascinating and kind of an antinomy. So I was talking with my son about it, who just had a tough go with the sickness, that the saints, when you encounter not the saints but just the monks and the monastics, when you encounter them and they have some sort of illness, they will, they're almost in their greeting, they will say, thank God that I am ill, thank God that this grace has visited me in terms of the illness. And it's hard for us to kind of wrap our minds around that, but imagine if we could. So I think I think that's what this point was in terms of getting this insight. I think if we can get inside this insight in terms of spiritual warfare, we're in a much better place. All right, next is St. Leo again. St. Leo, do not permit yourself to become greatly confused and despondent due to the fact that the operations of the enemy have started anew, both within and without, because they were hidden and lurking within you. But when there unexpectedly came an occasion for your anger and grief to be inflamed, they were revealed and became uncontrollable. In such cases, let us immediately hasten to God and to our one protectress and defender, the mediatrix of us all, the most holy Theotokos and ever Virgin Mary, and she, through her all-powerful prayers and intercession, will heal our infirmities, physical and spiritual. It's beautiful. Have you had any experiences building or developing, cultivating a relationship with the Theotokos? If you're from a secular position, but kind of sympathetic maybe to religious ideas, what does that mean to you? Is it completely unconceivable that something like that is possible? So let me know in the comments here. Next, St. Leo again. If you will only continue to do your assigned duties and obediences, and will try in every possible way to reveal all of your deeds and all of your thoughts which come from the enemy, the devil, and will strive in all ways to cut you off from your own will, and in no way believe your own thoughts. Will stay far away from doubting and judging others. Sorry, I'll have to read that one again. I just got a ring at the door. All right, let's try that again. If you will only continue to do your assigned duties and obediences, and will try in every possible way to reveal all of your deeds and all of your thoughts, which come from the enemy, the devil, and will strive in all ways to cut off your own will, and in no way believe your own thoughts, will stay far away from doubting and judging others as from a deadly poison, and with the cooperation of grace, will struggle to correct yourself, then I dare say that the all-merciful Savior will not only heal your wounds, but he will also grant you the gifts of humility and discretion. Wow, that was all one sentence, that whole quote there. That was just wonderful. Lots of paradoxes from a secular mindset, I think, when we talk about duties and obediences. It's interesting, the Orthodox idea of freedom, right? To be free, what is the meaning of freedom? The meaning of freedom is, in a sense, to commune with God, is to move your will and orient yourself towards Christ and obey, in a sense. So there's a lot of the beautiful antinomies in Christianity that I think are not meant to be resolved. They're meant to be lived into, and the mystery is the kind of the point. Sorry. All right, next is from St. Ambrose. Say the Jesus prayer against lustful temptations, but during temptations of anger, pray for the one who has upset you. Save, O Lord, and have mercy on the name of the person who upset you, and through her holy prayers help me, accursed and sinful. Another beautiful antinomy there, right? So if someone has angered you, let's say they justifiably, you were angry and it was justified in terms of they might have slighted you or whatever it may be. The advice here is to pray for the one who has upset you. And in the prayer, at the end it says, so the prayer is, save, O Lord, and have mercy on blank, and through her holy prayers, help me, accursed and sinful. Help me, accursed and sinful. So again, there's this play of the lowest and the highest, and there's this play of, the Christian story, in a sense. I think is beautiful. Interesting, it says at the start of the quote, say the Jesus prayer against lustful temptations. So lustful temptations, we are to have a sort of personal noetic or Jesus prayer. All right, next is from, let's see, St. Ambrose again. There's only one more here after this. What should someone do who is troubled and disturbed involuntarily by animosity and anger, envy and hatred, or is confused by lack of faith? First of all, one must give full attention to the causes of these passions and then use the appropriate spiritual medicine against those causes. Lack of faith comes from the love of earthly glory, as the Lord himself affirms in the Holy Gospel. How can ye believe which receive glory one of another, and seek not the honor that cometh from God only? It's from John 5:44. But envy, anger, and hatred come from pride and lack of love for one's neighbor. Pride and lack of love for one's neighbor. So again, this comes down to Christ's major commandment to love God with all your heart and love your neighbor as yourself. Those are the kind of most important tools, I think, from a current perspective, modern perspective, in terms of equipping yourself in spiritual warfare. Next, again, from St. Ambrose, and I think this is the last one. In spring, a gardener, first of all, clears the ground of all unwanted weeds, and then plants vegetables in clean soil. Soon the weeds come back again and continue to do so throughout almost the entire summer, and the gardener must carefully weed and clear away all the unwanted plants several times until his crop of vegetables is strong enough to survive. Our body is created from the same earth, and no matter how much a man tries to cleanse himself of the passions appear again, just like weeds. Let us turn again to the garden, which, if it is poorly attended, will suffer damage from goats and swine. Also, birds can fly through fencing. The gardener must be vigilant against all of these enemies and guard his crop. The Christian must guard his spiritual crop from the mental birds, which are sometimes transformed into other beasts. Our forefather Adam was told, quote from Genesis, in the sweat of thy face shalt thou eat thy bread, till thou return unto the ground, for of it was thou taken. Close quote. Some interesting imagery there. We have these morphing, shape-shifting birds that turn into beasts. I love this idea because it's salient to me in terms of my experience of the passions returning. Again, whether they're addictions or proclivities, they will return. There's a vigilance that is necessary. The tough part in our contemporary world with social media and just the digital space as a whole is it's hard to gather your attention and to be vigilant in terms of your thoughts. It's becoming increasingly more difficult the more you engage with this disintegrating force that is constantly scrolling and watching different types of mediums on or shows or videos or whatever it may be, even if they're educational in nature. Just the format and the way that information is cast to one's attention, I think makes it more difficult to gather one's consciousness to be vigilant. So again, humility is key. Philotimo is key. Loving God with all your heart and your neighbor as yourself is key. Easier said than done, right? So that was it. Let's see. The next, I'll read. There's 4 short quotes on love of neighbor. So let's go through those real quick, and then we'll close up here. St. Moses, may the Lord give you the wisdom and the strength to bear one another's burdens, and so fulfill the law of Christ, as well as love and peace. May the mistakes, faults, and sins of the brethren be mine. These are all from St. Moses, actually. Next, you must bear the spiritual infirmities of your brother gladly and without annoyance. For when someone is physically ill, we are not only not annoyed with them, but we are exemplary in our care for him. We should also set an example in cases of spiritual illnesses. I think in our time, the prevalence of mental illness is profound, and I think that this advice and this edifying advice from the saints is absolutely necessary. Next quote, if you must correct or reprimand someone, first pray to God for him in your heart. At times you think that the brother will not accept correction, but if you pray for him first, beyond your expectations, you will see that he listens to the reprimand peacefully and indeed corrects himself. And the last one here, if you want to be spiritually tranquil, never part from someone while feeling agitated, but try in every way to forgive everyone in your soul and to make peace as much as possible, so that you will part with each other in a peaceful spirit. And in this way, you will enjoy spiritual peace. All right, that's it. I wanted to make this short, and it's still over 20 minutes. So I hope everybody is well, and let me know what you guys think. And we'll see you guys next time. God bless.